The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of KSMQ Public Service Media Incorporated or its assigns.
Welcome to Garden Connections. I'm your host, Stephanie Passingham. As we get started in our gardens, one of the first things we can address is soil quality. Cindy Lippert from Dolan's Landscape Center will be joining us today to talk about possible amendments to help our plants grow. Paul and Karen Schmidt share their knowledge about growing asparagus, and our favorite chef, Stephen Larson, will show us a delicious way to prepare that asparagus. I hope you'll stay with us for Garden Connections. Well, it's finally time to get our hands dirty, and one of the first things we can do is check our soil to see if it is ready to support the health of our plants. Cindy Lippert from Dolan's Landscape Center is here to help us understand soil amendments. Welcome, Cindy. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, I'm so looking forward to getting my hands dirty. I've got tons of starts in the house that are ready to go outside, but sometimes what people do is they take a soil sample and they send it off to the university or one of the local soil testing centers. You can buy little kits in garden centers to test it yourself. And so folks are looking at this, so okay, now they have the results, and a lot of times they focus on NPK. So let's talk about that a little bit. Tell us what those letters stand for, and then what people can do with their soil when they find out they have too much or not enough of any one of those things.
NPK, the N is nitrogen, big green plants. The NP is for phosphates, that's your flowers and fruits, and the K is your potash, which is your healthy roots, basically.
Okay, so important to have something of all of them. It's got to be balanced in the right place.
Yes, if you get too much nitrogen, you get a big, beautiful tomato plant with no fruit.
No fruit.
But if you're not taking care of, the roots with the potash, you're not going to have fruit, so that phosphorus doesn't help either if there's no roots.
Right, so adding the wrong thing isn't going to fix the problem, say, if you have too much nitrogen.
Right.
Well, let's take each one of them separately. If you take that test and your nitrogen is too high, what can you do?
Basically, your best thing is to add some other amendments in there, like compost. That's going to be
boost that organic matter.
We'll talk about that more later, but that's your best fix right there, is always add compost. Some of the other ones is basically adding some more phosphates and potash to help level things out a little bit there too.
So it's the relationship between them as well.
Right. And there's a lot of micronutrients too that help, the boron, the magnesium, the zincs, that you can kind of watch for too. And there are some fertilizers out there that do have those in there. So once you get your soil test, find out where you're at, and you can start going from there. One of the things you can watch on fertilizer products is those three numbers.
Be a good label reader.
Yes. They usually put it in nice big bold letters or numbers so that you can see them. So there's your nitrogen, your phosphate, and your potash. And this one is going to be good for your garden, because your middle number, your fruits and flowers, is a little bigger than the other two. But if you find your nitrogen is too low, there's some other little fun things you can add in there too. You can find fertilizers that have a higher nitrogen, but another one, and it helps with your bunny control too, is your blood meal. Your blood meal's a 12.
Okay, so if you're low on nitrogen, this is a good one.
This is a good one, and it also helps. You have to be careful. If you're trying to get rid of rabbits with your blood meal, you're raising the nitrogen there too, so you got to watch out for that. So that
impacts your plants as well. Now this one, this is bone meal.
Bone meal.
And this just has the 10 in the middle.
Right. So if your nitrogen is good and your potash isn't bad, then you can go ahead and add the bone meal. And basically, bone meal is good for anything that has roots. And
a lot of people put this down just as a course of habit when they're planting.
They got to be careful with it though. If you put it on top of your soil, it doesn't do any good.
So it has to be in the hole.
It has to be in the hole. It has to be by the roots. If it's not by the roots, you've wasted your time and money.
Sounds good. Well, Cindy, you're going to stick around. You're going to be with us all show. That's great. Well, we recently paid a visit to Paul and Karen Schmidt, and they have an asparagus farm over by Preston, and we're going to check out what they're doing. Let's take a look. southeastern Minnesota, and we are visiting Paul and Karen Schmidt on their farm. It's a gorgeous day, and we're going to learn a little bit more about the diverse activities that they have on their farm. Well, Paul, you picked a great day to have us out today. It's beautiful, it's lovely weather. We're really looking forward to summer finally.
Finally, no snow today. That would be wonderful.
Now, you guys do quite a few things on your farm. You've got garlic, you've got hogs, you've got cute little goats that we looked at. You've got a ton of different things going on, but today we're going to talk about asparagus. How long have you guys been doing asparagus?
Oh, I think we've been doing asparagus about 8 years now. We planted our first patch about 8 years ago, and we've been harvesting that for 4 to 5 years, and subsequent plantings after that.
Okay, sounds good. So what made you decide to get into asparagus?
We were looking at crops that could really weatherproof themselves from hail damage, wind damage, those types of things. And asparagus, if it's damaged, you go out, pick the damaged material, toss it to the side, and the next crop
and
is
fresh
the next
comes
day.
up again.
So.
That's very nice, very convenient. So when you first started, you picked kind of a sheltered spot on your farm to put the first bunch in, and you didn't really start small, did you?
Well, it's small in comparison to the patch now. We put in 1,000 plants.
Wow.
It was based on the space we had, and the crowns are a lot cheaper if you can buy them in bulk.
In bulk,
and,
sure.
We've purchased some and shared with our neighbors before to get less expensive crowns.
That makes sense. That's a good idea. Gardeners always often do that and share plants or do dividings and things like that. Where do you get your crowns from?
We got our crowns from a company called the Jersey Asparagus Company. I know they've changed their name since we've purchased it, and I'm not sure what the new name is, but the varieties we've used are Jersey Giants and Jersey Knights, and it comes from the Jersey. It's in New Jersey. So,
oh, it is. Okay. All right.
Yep,
Great.
Yep. And they are they're one of the largest producers of asparagus, so you can get good discounts from them.
Great. Now, when you guys decided to pick those varieties, I've seen in catalogs, that they have different kinds, where it says all male. How do you decide which variety you want to grow? There's some purple ones, there's green, there's traditional green ones. How do you decide?
We wanted what's supposed to be a healthy and vigorous asparagus that is going to be prolific in a row type situation. The spacing we wanted is about 8 to 10 inches in between plants, and then you get a relatively consistent diameter on that asparagus. And that's the Jersey Knight or the Jersey Giant. They both are very vigorous in those situations. There's older varieties like
isn't there a Martha Washington or something?
Yep, that's an older variety. That's in a lot of these little garden patches you see, or in the road ditch, because they're not specifically male or female, so they'll seed out and then seed into the road.
And is that why you go typically with all male plants? Is that the selling point of those?
Yep. We try and get all males, and you wind up with a few females, but then they don't seed out and they don't spread out of the row. We'd like to keep ours in the row if we can.
Okay, so. Makes sense. So is there one type of soil better than another for growing asparagus, or is it pretty hardy? Can you even grow it in a heavier clay soil? Or what's that most ideal condition, and how tolerant is it?
Right. What we've got here is Fayette silt loam. Silt loam's a really good soil for it. Clays are all right if they're well drained. High organic matter is great. It's not very tolerant of wet feet. If it stays wet for a long time, you won't have the longevity of the plant. Our patch out by the house, our old patch, and I think they may be Martha Washingtons, I'm not sure. They've been there 25 years now, and they're still productive. The older ones are 8 years old, and I'd say they're about optimal right now. They're very productive, more productive than these newer plants that we've got right here. But yeah, the silt loam's really good, well-drained area, full sunlight, high organic matter if you can, and that's easily manipulated.
So you can amend your soil if it doesn't happen to have that, okay.
Right. One of the things when you plant, they really recommend that you add phosphate in some form. Okay. Straight manure is a wonderful way, horse manure, because it really won't burn it
Okay.
It's higher in carbon. But we used a product, it's a triple phosphate, and we put that right in the trenches when we planted.
So you plant that in. Now in our test garden, we didn't backfill very much. We kind of anchored the roots so they didn't blow away or tip over, but then we kind of filled as the crown grew. Is that, I mean, on a large scale, is that practical?
It's the suggested way of doing it. When we made the trenches, we were able to have a hump of dirt on both sides. So the initial covering was one side, and then we'd hope to come back and rake in the other side, possibly the next year. That didn't work quite as well. Just the soil had set up too much, and we have been using horse manure to gradually fill in the trench, and we get a lot
Provide some nutrients.
Yeah,
for
we get a lot of grass clippings because we mow in between the rows.
Okay.
So we blow that grass right in there, so it's filling in.
So good organic matter. All right,
Yep,
great. Well, let's take a look at some of the plants. Now these ones you have had in, did you say 4 years?
Yeah, these are 4 years, so these guys are on their second year of full production when we can pick them the full season.
Okay, so it takes at least, you're picking, your first pick is then on their 3rd year in the ground.
We actually, and if your plant's growing vigorously, the second year you can pick for a couple of weeks. The 3rd year, if your plant isn't stressed, now ours were last year because of the drought we had here, you should be able to pick that full 4, 6, maybe 8 weeks if everything's going along good.
Okay.
So.
Great. And do you cover these? Do you mulch these in the wintertime?
No, we don't. What we do is we let the ferns grow up, and we leave the ferns, and then they basically winter kill. I mean, the ferns die.
Tops die
and we
out.
try and leave that all winter, and then as early as you can get out here in the spring, we come down and just mow right over the top. The old stems are here still.
Oh, sure. Yep, you can
We
see
try and
those.
mow all that. If you can leave that stem on over the winter, you don't open up a conduit for molds and fungus to get in there. So you just want to keep anything from getting down and damaging the crown. And if you can leave that stubble on, then you don't have a conduit right down there for moisture
down into the roots.
fungus.
All right.
So.
Well, I understand Karen has quite a bit to do with the asparagus when it's time to actually pick.
Yes, she certainly does.
All right. Well, let's go visit with her and we'll find out what's going on.
Great.
Hi, Karen. Hi. I was just talking to Paul, and he was telling us all about how you guys put all of these thousands of asparagus plants in, but he said you are chief in charge when it comes to harvesting.
Yes, this is where I spend my spring.
All right. A beautiful place to do it.
Yes.
So let's take a look at some of these plants and tell us what's the optimal size to pick.
I like to let it grow as long as it possibly can before it starts opening up. So you don't.
And when you say open up, you mean this part, right?
Yep, you don't want the tops to start opening out. There is some seeds in there and you don't want those showing. So you try and get as much height as you can out of them before you harvest, and got to predict before they're going to open up. So.
All right, be a good forecaster. Now this seems fairly sturdy in size. Is there an ideal diameter that you're looking for, or really that's just kind of up to the plant and you'll see a variety of sizes and shapes in the same crown?
Yep, that's exactly true. We get different diameters. We found a lot with the younger crowns, they will produce a narrower diameter.
Okay, and as the plant matures, then it starts sending up. Okay, so we can see in this one that there are some little guys coming down here. So about how long does it take, and these are the old ones that Paul was telling us about too, how long does it take for something, this one's only about 2 inches tall, to get up to something more like 10 inches tall?
Right, that really depends on your weather conditions. If you have good moisture and heat, you can go from here to here in a day.
Oh really? Wow, that is fast.
Yeah. If it's cool and dry, it's going to be a little slower. But typically I try to get out here at least every day once to do a picking so things don't get ahead of us.
Okay. Now, do you cut with a knife? Do you simply snap them off? How do you pick your asparagus?
We snap ours off. We prefer doing that because it leaves anything that would be woody in the stem, leaves that on the ground, and then we don't need to do any trimming before we sell it or eat it.
Okay. All right. And I've heard when you're in the kitchen, then you should snap it, but it sounds like if you're snapping it to begin with, you can really utilize the whole stalk.
Yep. We always tell our customers that they've been snapped, so it's 100% edible.
Okay, sounds good. So once you've picked this, then what do you do to kind of maintain the row? You were telling me a little bit earlier about some of the mowing that you do.
Yeah. We realized early on that there would be no way to keep all the weeds and grass out of our rows, so we've learned to live with it and just use it as part of the field. Between the rows, we left enough space that we could get our mower through, and we mow between the rows at least once a week, about once a week, and then every 1 to 2 weeks we actually mow over the top of the rows.
Oh, you do? Okay.
So what we'll do is we'll go through right before our market date. We'll go through and we'll clean pick everything. We'll even pick these little guys.
Okay, so clean pick means take it all.
Take it all. Yep, we take 100% of everything. And then these little guys they're really special, tender little ones that people really enjoy too.
Yep. So after you've clear cut then, when you're looking at a plant, how often can you come back and pick from that same plant? I mean, you've got several rows out here. Are you in a row once a week, once every 2 weeks when you do kind of that clear cut, or how many times can you come back to the same plant?
I'll actually come back every day. Once we do the clear cutting, you'll have probably 2-3 days before you're going to have anything that's harvestable again.
Okay.
Because we did take even the small ones.
Small ones, yeah.
I come out when it's good moisture, good humidity, and hot. There might be days I have to pick twice a day.
Wow.
So it's if you want to stay ahead of it before it's turning to seed, you really got to stay on top of it because it does grow fast.
Now in the spring, and you've got some examples here, we had a crazy spring.
Yeah.
We had some cold weather after the asparagus came up. So you had some frost damage. Show us what that looks like and what do you do with that?
Right. So one of the good things about asparagus, it can take the frost. It will damage the plant, the sprouts that are up, and those are not edible.
And that's what this one is?
No.
It kind of curled over? And
Yep, it just kind of turns to mush.
yeah, he's still pretty firm, but you can feel he's softer up here.
Where he's gotten the frost, then he's not edible anymore. So we do need to get those off of the plants. So we do try and come through and snap all those off and get them off. We don't want the rot going down into the crown.
Okay, so you do have to remove it. It won't just wither away.
Yep, but they still keep coming. So
which is nice.
Yep.
So how long does the harvest season last for asparagus?
We usually harvest 6 to 8 weeks.
All right, so usually done in the middle of June or?
About July 1st.
July 1st?
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got a good while to go yet.
Yeah.
All right, sounds good. What are the favorite things that you do with asparagus in your kitchen?
Well, for years, every day we ate it steamed with butter and salt on it. So we loved it that way.
It's just straight, just regular.
Every day for lunch we'd have some steamed asparagus. We're doing quite a bit more sauteing with lemon juice and garlic. Now is kind of our favorite way to eat it. So.
All right. Well, I understand you have an award-winning recipe for what you've done with your asparagus. Was
Pickled
it at the county
asparagus.
fair last year?
Yeah, my pickled asparagus won the reserved grand champion at our county fair, so
Great.
we're proud of that.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, you guys have an amazing place here to see thousands and thousands, and these rows are so long. But it's great for home gardeners to see and hear some of these tips that they can use in their garden as well with asparagus. Karen, thanks so much for having us out.
Thank you.
All right. Stay tuned for more Garden Connections.
Well, we're back here in the Garden Connection studio, and we are with Cindy Lippert from Dolan's Landscape Center, and she is helping us understand soil amendments. We talked a little bit earlier about specific fertilizer needs in our NPK, but now we're going to talk about other amendments. And one of the things Paul mentioned when he establishes his asparagus beds, when he's going to be planting new crowns, they have horses, and he just takes horse manure and runs it down the row and mixes it in as a good starter for those crowns. And he said it doesn't seem to burn his crowns when he gets started. Manures are not all the same.
Right. Your basic rule is that, 3 years of breaking down works great. But if you're mixing it with soil, that helps a lot. So you're not burning those tender little crowns or the little transplants you're putting out.
And does it matter? I mean, is our horse manure a little bit more mild than others? I hear chicken manure can be very tough on your plants, and you definitely need to compost that before you put it on.
All animals are different, so your manures are going to be different there too. I brought one today, a compost that's from mushrooms.
Oh, okay.
From growing mushrooms.
So, it's
so there's all kinds,
fungi-based one.
Yes, all kinds of different composts out there, and a lot of it is what people are familiar with, what they're comfortable with, what they personally like.
What they have access to.
What they have access to.
So you've got mushroom compost, other soil amendments. You've got a couple of examples here of things that I've seen in potting soil starts. Can you put this directly in your garden? We've got some vermiculite.
Vermiculite
here.
And there's also there's a shot right there of what it's more gray. And then the perlite is more like a styrofoam. That one I don't care too much to have it in there. The other one that I have is the peat moss, which, you know, it comes in a bale and you just crumble it and it pulls apart. What those guys are is if you have a soil test done and you will find you have clay soil or sand soil or somewhere in between. And if your soil is too heavy, a lot of clay, you add these lighteners to them.
So
mix
that the water can percolate through, the nutrients can move through.
And getting the air. You need to get the air in there.
Clay is so sticky.
Yep.
It's just really hard to work with, and it's hard to hoe. I mean, if that gets wet and then dries, boy, you have a tough time.
So all of these, putting compost in, putting the vermiculite or perlite or the peat moss and mixing it all in there helps.
Just helps lighten your soil, air, water, can all get
And then it goes the other way with the sand. Sand is so light and it drains so fast. Well, adding compost fixes it. Adding these other ones, these will hold moisture. The peat moss and the vermiculite and the perlite, they hold moisture. So that will help that sandy soil
there too. That's a good point, because otherwise you're sending any fertilizers that you're adding right through, and the root zone isn't able to hang on to it.
Yes.
So these are good for either really heavy or very, I guess sand isn't light, but very loose soils.
Yep, and so your best thing throughout the whole season is keep adding your organic matter. So you harvest a crop and I'm not going to use these pea pods anymore. You can put them in your compost pile or just work them back into the soil.
Well, coming up next, all that asparagus that we just saw at Paul and Karen's place, Chef Stephen Larson from the Quarter Restaurant is going to show us how he fixes it. Let's take a look.
Hi, I'm Chef Stephen Larson. Welcome to my kitchen at Quarter Restaurant in Harmony, Minnesota. Next recipe that we're going to do is prosciutto wrapped asparagus. Now, asparagus is one of my favorite springtime vegetables, and we grow a lot of it on our farm. And this is a great way to use quite a lot of asparagus at once in a very elegant preparation. So what we have here is some fresh asparagus that I've already washed and snapped, and then I've blanched it just for a minute in boiling salted water and then cooled it down again. So that's going to be the basis for our dish. We're going to wrap those in prosciutto ham. Now, prosciutto ham is particular to Italy, and this is sliced very thin, which also makes it work very well for wrapping the asparagus with. So we're going to do that here by taking 2 pieces of the prosciutto and laying that out. And we'll take our bundle of blanched asparagus and we want to roll that up tightly so it doesn't come apart. And that's how to make the bundles. Now I've got a few of those made already here, and we want this to look very nice, so I'm actually going to trim the ends so that it's flat on the bottom. And then we're going to cut these so that they stand upright, so it makes for a pretty presentation. So on the angle once, straight across, and then up they go. All right, then we'll cut the rest here. Now we want some sauce down on that platter so that we have a nice sauce to go along with them, and it's going to add a lot of visual appeal as well. So I'm using a homemade smoked paprika and a sherry vinegar, kind of a dressing, sort of a creamy dressing. So we're going to put some of that down on the plate. We call that swooshing in the business. Then we're going to stand the rest of our bundles upright. And there's the dish, prosciutto wrapped asparagus, because there's nothing better than eating fresh from the garden.
Well, that looks delicious. I think I'm going to put that on my summer menu this year. Looks great, and Chef Larson always does a terrific job. Well, thank you, Cindy, so much for being with us today on today's show and telling us all about soil amendments and what we can do to get the dirt or the soil ready for our gardening this summer. Really appreciate you being here.
All right, thank you.
And thank you for being here. We hope you've enjoyed this week's Garden Connections, and I hope you'll come back next time. I'm your host, Stephanie Passingham.
On Garden Connections, we'd love to see photos of your garden. Or if you have questions for our garden experts, contact us by emailing garden@ksmq.org or like us on Facebook.